Fresh and Buds.
All right, welcome back to Fresh and Buds. I am your host, Tommy Fresh. I am joined by a good bud of mine, Mr. Matt DeMarco, aka Flake. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. If only everyone knew all the hubbub surrounding this particular episode, they would appreciate it that much more. But here we are, and I'm excited to be here. So I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Yeah, we ran into some technical difficulties. I'm actually, rocking the old laptop for this one, since it looks like I'm actually getting a whole new part for my PC getting sent out next week, which is just so much fun, man. Don't you just love that?
Well, when things, in your mind, there's like this plan and everything goes well, and then all of a sudden something just blows up, or your computer decides that it wants to be an a-hole, and then you got to revert to old friends, things that you leaned on in the past, like your laptop, and that's
Yeah.
so. Thanks for those, still being around, because I swear I have been bailed out. I once had to do an entire. I forgot what it was. I think it was like a podcast recording or a guest spot on something. The power went out in my apartment during a live broadcast, and I had to plug in through Discord on my cell phone.
Oh
That
my
was
God.
exciting. Yeah, the show must go on. So here we are, and you're a trooper for making it happen.
Oh, absolutely, and obviously very grateful for you to stick around through the difficult times here. But actually, it harked back to an old episode that I did, where I talked about how to deal with being tilted. And I mean, I'll be honest, I was pretty tilted last night, but I went through the old adage that I that I made up for the podcast back in, I think, episode 2. So we're here with you. I want to get into a little bit about you. We're gonna talk some flesh and blood. We're gonna talk Canadian Nats. We're gonna get into all kinds of stuff. But first, tell me a little bit about you, your origins in card games, and like content creation.
So card games and myself, we go way back, and in terms of content creation and how those two worlds collided was essentially a long time ago. I mean, I still am a massive Star Wars fan, and back in the day, I've always liked strategy games. And before I got into cards, like when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, I was always playing games like Warcraft, Starcraft, and that eventually I crossed paths with Star Wars CCG by the now defunct Decipher Inc. Decipher, by the way, made the best card games that I've ever played in my life, which is Star Wars CCG and Lord of the Rings TCG. Those were the two best card games that I wish were still around. They were the most unique that I've ever played in my entire life, and I wish that they were still supported. Well, there's like some of them are still supported. There's still a culture for them, but I wish that the game still existed. But anyway, that's a whole other podcast. I got into that. That naturally progressed to me exploring other card games. I never really was deep into Magic. I played it, but it seemed like there was just too much of it for me to get into, and it was too intimidating as a youngster to dive into. So Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, that was my main jam, and then that expanded into, like dipping your toe into Pokemon, a little bit of Magic, BattleTech, a whole bunch of different card games, and ultimately, when the digital era sort of ushered in, it was Hearthstone, and that's what really drove me to start playing Hearthstone on stream, because I moved from Montreal to Toronto and I didn't have many friends here, and after work I would basically spend a lot of my time playing these games because I didn't know anybody in the city. And when it's the middle of winter and there's not much to do, that's what you do, is you just sort of play these kinds of games. And while I was still in Montreal, I used to, like, in school, I ran my college radio station. I interned at a sports radio station in Montreal for about a year, and I did a lot of stage style MC comedy work and things of that nature. And that kind of sparked that interest in me that broadcasting is definitely a passion that I want to pursue. And the two kind of, the marriage between nerdy card games and broadcasting was essentially just exemplified by the fact that Twitch was a thing and people said you should try this, and why not? You're always yapping and talking to yourself anyways, might as well do it with a camera in front of your face. And that's where we are today. And that essentially progressed to Gwent. Gwent became the cornerstone of my broadcast career. I still play that game. I stream it daily. I love it. I'm part of their official broadcast team for all their major events. And yeah, I mean, that was the game that essentially put me on the proverbial map and gave me my opportunity. It afforded me my opportunities to pursue a career in esports broadcasting, which really just, I don't want to say exploded, because that's not what happened, because it was a long and arduous process of hard work. But it gave me the connections and the reputation, the slow burn reputation of being somebody that was reliably good at what they did, and was I got opportunities in various different card games, and ultimately Flesh and Blood, and that's something that I cherish and I never take for granted, because it is something that to this day, to this very moment right now, November 19th, 9:56 a.m., I still am flabbergasted by the fact that people trusted me to do those types of broadcasts, like the U.S. Nationals, and I'll never not appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do have to say that you, and I'm not just trying to, talk you up here, but you really do have a great voice for broadcasting. It is honestly, very impressive. I didn't watch any of the Orlando stream because I was there, so I went back and watched some matches. I was like, wow, Matt's great, and we had started talking, and obviously I knew the Instant Speed podcast, which is your Flesh and Blood podcast, which we'll plug at the end here, but you do have a gift, man. I'm not just saying that, and it harks back to some other card game broadcasters that I enjoy, such as Marshall Sutcliffe is a big inspiration for me. He's got that beautiful radio voice, and you really do too, man. I gotta say.
Well, I appreciate it, because honestly, I don't want to say, part of it is honestly just finding your own confidence to not necessarily put on a shtick or some sort of this disguise of I am playing the radio broadcaster. What you see here is usually what you get. Like I didn't have the opportunity to meet you in Orlando, and that is honestly something that really, I don't say bothers me, but it's a lost opportunity that I'm sure that we can obviously make up for in many future events.
Oh yeah, we will.
But one thing that I can honestly say is that when you meet me, I am the same person on stream as I am on a broadcast as I am at the card table. I guess on the broadcast I swear a lot less. That's
Yeah.
definitely it. That is if I were to say that there's one gift that I am very happy that I have, it's that I have this inherent ability to switch on and off the swear words based on whether the red light is on or off. Like, okay, we're live. All right, swear words are now off. That is the gift I have. I'm not a good athlete. I'm not particularly very good at card games. I'm not, I can't, I'm not talented in many other things, but like if there's one thing that I could say that I have been blessed with, it's the fact that when it matters, I cannot swear. And that's very important to me, especially since I'm going to be doing speeches at a wedding this coming weekend. Yeah,
well,
I have to gauge the room
there, right?
I figure, well, it depends if it's open bar or not. That is, I guess, the one back door around that little skill set is there's this like, yeah, they leave that gate open and then all of a sudden it becomes a 4-letter word fiesta. So we'll see how that one pans out.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I honestly, I do think that is a gift because, personally, I swear, a ton in real life as well.
Yeah.
I'm actually surprised that I don't swear as much. I don't even really think I've sworn podcast yet. Maybe I have. Obviously,
but that's talent. That's talent.
Fair game.
Well, this is where you need to give yourself credit because that is absolutely a skill that needs to be recognized. And I know that this is going to sound ridiculous, but it's actually a skill because those who are not necessarily as refined or experienced will let those words through, and that could be detrimental to the broadcast. It could be detrimental to your career reputation.
Mm-hmm.
So give yourself credit because Lord knows that I have done this way back when, and never again, because I've gotten that one warning where, and then you just you go from there.
Yeah, yeah. So, getting into some flesh and blood here, and hopefully not cursing too much. Um, so when did you get into flesh and blood? Who's your favorite hero? Give me a little bit of that.
Well, I got into Flesh and Blood probably just around Monarch Unlimited, I believe, where a friend of mine by the name of Lewis Woodhouse introduced me to the game. He was very involved in it at the time, and I saw him streaming it on, I believe it was Tabletop Simulator, just kind of messing around with stuff just to introduce people to the game. And I popped in because every time he streams, I like to just say hello, and I was like, what is this? This sounds fantastic. And he was very integral into sort of establishing a culture and a community in his, neck of the woods in the UK. And he introduced me to the game, and he gave me a brief tutorial. And I said, I got to check this out. So I looked at my local game store. I bought a box and a couple starter decks, and it went to town. And that was essentially the beginning of it, because it felt incredible to not just open packs again, but I used to play Magic, and Magic never really did it for me. I had the luxury of getting into Magic seriously and really dumping money into it around Dominaria, and I feel like when you start at the top of the mountain, you can only
Yeah.
tumble down that way, right? So I got in at an absolutely A+ set. And I said, if this is Magic, I don't know why I didn't get into this sooner. This is going to be my whole life. And Ravnica was great. I went backwards through Ixalan, Kaladesh, Amonkhet, to whatever was standard legal. And then you fall into the War of the Spark, just, catastrophe that
Oh, yeah.
really turned me
Oh,
off
yeah.
from the game. So I just didn't enjoy it anymore, and I got away from it. But I really just dumped all my time into digital platforms and digital titles. I played some Magic Arena, but mostly it was Gwent. Mostly it was, I tried a little bit of Runeterra, but that was it until Flesh and Blood, wherein Flesh and Blood rolled around, and I bought the packs, and I was like, this was a feeling that I really honestly missed. And it's not just that dopamine hit of cracking a pack and looking at the cards, but the fact that I was able to do so at a table with people at a draft, play, learn the cards, get integrated into a community that had already started to flourish, wherein everybody in that community was incredibly amazing and nice. And I have, I'm lucky enough where the community that I get to play in has some of the best players in Canada, and also some of the nicest people in the game. So losing to these players was always a privilege, because they would teach you about how they beat you. So it was an exquisite experience to just learn. And I don't care about losing. Honestly, I always say this. I say this at the end of every single broadcast I do, stream, podcast. I say, you're not losing if you're learning. So I try to take some sort of learning, some lesson out of every loss. And the people that I play with were always very accommodating to not just beat me and smile about it, but I mean, walk me through the lines. Like my first introduction to Bolton OTK was at Road to Nationals, but it was against a player that I had played against. And after that loss, he basically said, okay, here's how you beat this. And I was like, thank you. This is, yeah. So we walked through the cards, and it was a great experience. But my favorite hero, to answer that question, is Katsu. Katsu was the first hero that I had ever been introduced to from a perspective of in-depth and a competitive build. My friend Liam Holden from the UK, who's a very, very excellent Katsu player, walked me through his deck and gave me a little bit of rundown about how the hero works. And I said, this is amazing. This is kind of what I want. This is like the Jedi of Flesh and Blood, where multiple attacks, swinging that lightsaber around, deflecting, dodging, flick-flacking, doing all this kind of nonsense, building up to this, taking the Magenshi Express all the way to Lord of Wind Station and just crushing your opponent. And that's precisely what I liked about it. And the more I explored other heroes, I learned that they all had unique identities, play styles, and it just made me appreciate the game much more, but it also made me appreciate each hero uniquely and thus loving Katsu even more because I'm like, this is what I like. It could be aggro, it could be control. It's a little bit of a jack of all trades. It forces your opponent to make decisions, and I love that.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point about each hero having their own identity. That's something I feel, yeah, at least in my experience with card games, that is pretty unique to Flesh and Blood. I mean, every set they're putting out, they're creating, like 3 to 4 new archetypes essentially, and so far most have been viable, which is really cool.
Well, I mean, Tales of Aria has been a revelation in terms of the fact that new heroes really do change the pace, but it also reinvigorates old archetypes that can either get a little bit of help, but like Terra Sunder, just kind of throw that into a Bravo list, and suddenly you're feeling a little bit cheeky. Um, but just look at how the past few major events have gone. You've had this Briar not resurgence, but this Briar uprising, followed by people who kind of thought that Oldhim within Limited was untouchable, which proved to be relatively untrue. But players like Nam Vo were exceptionally proficient with that hero. And then the past few times you've seen, Lexi won Canadian Nationals. Lexi has been a revelation in her own right in terms of how that hero can pick and choose a meta and punish it. So in the past, month or two, we have seen how each hero has their day in the sun, but there has also been a resurgence of Bravo, a resurgence of Dash, a resurgence of Chain, where people thought Chain was DOA, but suddenly Chain is making top 8s and really reminding people how amazing it is to just have a 9-card hand, So
yeah, that you would think after the Seeds of Agony ban, people would have said, well, you still get 5 extra cards, each turn. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's like, I get it. You're losing 9 incredible hits off the top of your deck, and you'll have to fill that void. But basically, what somebody told me was that, okay, so Chain is no longer S+0 tier. Chain is just A+ tier or A tier. So you're getting a deck that was redonkulous busted, and you're busting it down to very good. Is that really a detriment to this hero? It's like, we get it. Briar is very good, but Chain has been incredible as well. And I feel like perhaps Chain might be able to dodge some of other decks' shortfalls or shortcomings in terms of or something like Briar being susceptible to ice or whatnot. Chain might be able to get around that in certain regards, but nonetheless, it's just been fascinating how the new set has come out, has given every single hero its sort of spotlight, some more than others, obviously. But I just like how, like you said, new sets come out and it just shines a little bit of light on these heroes. It just sort of pumps their tires a little bit more, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. But so Katsu, I do like Katsu. I've never actually piloted Katsu. I've played against Katsu, and the learning experience of when to block the Kodachis was very enlightening for sure. I was like, oh my god, what is it? Like I remember it was probably my second match of CC ever. I'm looking across the table for me, and this is the first time I see Mask of Mo. Like, hey, can I read that card? They're like, yeah, sure, go for it. I pick up the card. I'm like, oh, this is bad for me. And they're like,
Yes.
yeah, this is pretty crazy. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to have to learn how to play against this thing. But that's awesome. Katsu's amazing. We're going to crack a pack. We did crack one when we tried to record before. I thought about just going through those same cards, but you know what? We're going to crack a new pack, I think.
So wait, before we do that, because first of all, a number one, this is one of my favorite parts because I love hearing the crinkling of the wrapping, which is just, it's this effervescent feeling in the back of my eyes that just makes me itch to crack my own packs. But we did crack one before technology hated us. What were the hits in that one, like the big hits?
The big hits, actually, it was actually a relatively. I mean, we did have a foil red Mavrian Skies, which
Okay.
I think the blue one sees play. Promise of Plenty, Not much of there, and high speed impact, which
Okay.
I do believe.
But this one,
This one,
this one's gonna be incredible.
this one's gonna have the Shyana, maybe.
A
This
little
is
shape-shifting action. I'm all for it.
so this is a Crucible of War Unlimited. So let's get that nice crinkle going. And I agree with you about the pack crinkling. I think there needs to be more of that on pod.
Definitely. I mean, like it engulfs the listener to just bring them into the show. It's like they're there with you, you know? It's a great feeling. Like, you know that feeling where you're sitting at the draft and they're like, "All right, everybody open your packs." And all you hear it across the entire
Mm-hmm.
room. It's this beautiful feeling, like you know that everyone at that moment, the hopes are high. No one is disappointed yet. Everybody has that anticipation for the big hit. Everybody's on the same level, whether you draw garbage or you pull a heart of ice. Everybody is having the same thoughts. And then, I mean, that lasts maybe 2 or 3 seconds before the wrapper comes off and there's some significant disappointments. But at that moment, everyone's on the same page, and that's why I love hearing that noise.
You know what? It does remind me that there is kind of a spectrum on enjoyment of the sound of packs crinkling. I think it's at the best when you're opening the pack, and then at the saddest when you go to touch a pack to see if there was still cards in it, and there's none, and you're like, "Oh my god,
Yes.
I just want more." And then the judge is going around grabbing all the crinkle and like, "Oh, there they." But first up, we have a hero, Dash, inventor extraordinaire. How do you feel about Dash?
Dash is a very I mean, fascinating to me. I like the idea of Dash where, you know, the versions of Dash right now that are viable, the control style Dash is getting the induction chambers and all the, you know, the steam counters going on and just popping shots at your opponent over time, having this gigantic sort of Willy Wonka-esque factory of destruction going on. Like, I love it. It's fantastic. You have this assembly line that you have to build up towards. I really like Dash.
Absolutely. And harking back to when you said that, you know, like players will teach you things. I had played against a Dash while I was playing Oldham, and it was just something hadn't even realized that the shield rampart of the Ram's head, you know, when they activate their pistol, it goes back, or when they break the chain, it goes back, and I can reuse it, and it just keeps getting bigger in that combat or in that
Uh-huh.
turn, which is just like shuts down the steam pistol or Teklo Foundry pistol, whatever. And it was like, oh, okay, now I know how to beat this this deck, I guess. But we do have a couple Mechanologists back. First is Combustible Courier. This is the red one. It's a 2 cost, 4 attack, 3 defense. If it hits the next attack, you boost this combat chain, gains +3. It boosts.
Well, again, like the boost element of Mechanologist, I feel, is a little bit. It's not. It's not. I wouldn't say it's gimmicky, but if you're going all in on boost, you might be disappointed. It's, you know, because look at all the other, you know, types of decks that run a lot of go again. This is one that has a very conditional go again that could potentially bite you in the ass, and you're burning cards off the top in order to do so. Whereas, you know, let's put this against the Briar list. So this Combustible Courier as a 4/3 boost has a 2 cost, wherein the Briar version would have a 0 cost and likely a go again on top of it. So the whole boost mechanic needs probably some sort of weapon to supplement it, a very viable weapon that really banks on boost. But we'll see how this goes. But I mean, Combustible Courier, the next attack, you know, you boost this combat chain, gains +3. So you need to boost this one to get the go again. Then the next one you boost, or the next attack you make has to have boost, has to hit boost, and then you get the +3. But this is already soaking up 2 resources out of your pool, so
Yeah, not the best. And 4 power at the red is just nah, not the best. But
no
we
thanks.
got Teklo Workshop next. This is 0 costed non-attack action, 3 defense. Opt X. X is the number of times you have boosted this turn. Deal the top card of your deck. If it's a Mechanologist item card with cost 0, put it into the arena.
Right. So, number of times you've boosted this turn. Let's say it's 2. You're opting to.
Mm-hmm.
If it's an item that you find, you can put it into the arena. I mean, that's good, but there already are item tutors out there, I believe, that feel might be just a little bit more reliable than this. It's an action that doesn't have go again, so this ends your turn. When is this better, let's say, than following up with another attack? I feel like it's a little bit weak.
Definitely weak. I mean, maybe it sees them playing the Data Doll Blitz decks, which I haven't found to be good anyway. So next we got Emerging Dominance. This is the Guardian action aura. The 2 cost, 3 defense. Beginning of your action phase, destroy it. Next Guardian attack action card you play this turn, +3 and dominate.
Right. So this is actually, I don't say this is not bad. I think that this is a card that, I mean, it blocks for 3. That's already decent. At the beginning of your action phase, you destroy it. So you're paying 2. So let's put it this way: on a blue pitch, you're hitting a seismic surge token, and then you're dropping this, and your next attack will gain +3 and dominate. That's pretty significant when you're running if you have, let's say, a crush effect in the pocket that you want to follow up with. I think Emerging Dominance is a pretty sweet card.
Yeah, I agree. This is, it goes into a little more of the aggressive versions of Bravo, if you wanted, but yeah, no, solid card. Next we got the blue Push Forward. This is a warrior action, +1, 3 defense. Your next weapon attack this turn gains +1. If you've attacked with a weapon this turn, your next attack this turn gains dominate. It says go again.
I just feel like, for the fact that you're paying 1 for it, I just hate paying for these types of cards.
Yeah.
Like unless it was something where it was a little bit more over the top, but I just don't like paying 1 to gain like a +1 or whatever. Like the dominate effect is good. I guess that's kind of what you're paying for in this case, is the fact that it's going to gain dominate. But yeah, I don't have much reps against warrior and 0 as warrior. So this is a card that I can't really assess. It just seems like I wouldn't want to pay 1 for it. But then again, I guess if you're swinging with a weapon, you're just pitching a blue and doing some nonsense with it. But that's kind of,
I believe the red one sees some play in Dorinthia. But you bring up a good point. Like, paying 1, it just feels bad, right? Are we spoiled though? Are we spoiled?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I think it's just the fact that we're spoiled because we're knee deep in a meta now where paying for cards is so that's so August. It's so August 2021. Nobody pays for cards. What are you, crazy? That's so like back in the day. No, I feel like. But then again, like I grew up. What an incorrect way to say that. But I started playing on Katsu, where, it's like, all right, I'll pay for my Surging Strike, but everything after that, suck it. I ain't paying for Jack S. It's not happening.
Nice save. Next, we got one that I actually don't really like that much, at least in Brute, because it is a Brute action attack. Swing Fist. Think later. I do love the name. It's a 1-costed, 3 attack, 3 defense. This is the yellow, so I guess 4 attack, 3 defense. As additional cost, you discard a card at random and again. I don't know. I would have preferred, obviously, at the red attack.
Yeah.
A Brute attack, or in the Brute.
Well, yeah, the inherent problem with this card is the fact that its base attack is sub 6. If you're playing Brutes, you typically want stuff with 6 in it. The go again is great. The cost on it is fine. I would prefer if this card was like a 2, cost 2, and the red was a 6. Like, that feels pretty good. You want to be discarding cards anyway, typically, as a Brute. But I just feel like as a 4 for the go again, like maybe you're playing Zealous Belting instead or something along those lines, right? So that might be a better option.
Absolutely. Next we got Out for Blood. This is a warrior attack reaction. 1 cost red. It defends for 3. Target weapon attack gains +3. Reprise if the defending hero has defended with a card from their hand this chain link. Your next attack this.
All right, this feels okay. I mean, it defends for 3. It's an attack reaction. Most attack reactions, as far as I know, are 2 blocks. I think everything in this set seems to be 3 blocks, which is fantastic. But yeah, target weapon attack gains +3. That's kind of what you want. Your warrior attacks, your Dorinthia, decks with reprise are really great. Combat tricks and Dorinthia. I mean, bread, peanut butter jelly. That's kind of what that is. And yeah, I really dig this card. I think that again, my prowess with warrior is very limited, so it's hard for me to pass judgment on these cards. The art is pretty cool. I'll definitely give it that.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know, what's he holding? Kind of
Type of like
tentacles?
It looks. Yeah, it's got like tentacles going. It's got like a Dr. Zoidberg thing going on.
Yeah. Next we got a foil. This is not a too spicy of a foil, unfortunately, but very cool art. This is Foreboding Bolt. Wizard action, 3 defense, the blue one, cost 1, deal 1 arcane damage to target hero, opt 1. We're going to talk a little bit about Kano later, actually.
Damn right we are. Well, I mean, you're paying, in this case, you're paying for the opt 1, right? Like, that's basically what it is. Anytime a card can do 2 things, you got to pay a premium on it. In this case, dealing 3 arcane for 1 with the opt on top of it sounds all right. But again, Kano is just a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, it sure is.
I still get haunted by the Kano match I played at Nationals, but oh my god, yeah. I mean, cool art. See, I don't know how the foil would look on this because it's such a dark complexion on it. Like it has this sort of shadowy, aura. So I don't know how the rainbow foil on this would kind of come off as.
It's actually pretty cool. So the wizard has like that blue stuff going on. That's shiny, and then like the white behind the demon thing, shiny as well. So the darkness is like not really that shiny. Neat, regardless. We have a weapon as a rare, Reaping Blade.
Ooh,
not quite Rosetta.
The Reaping Blade.
I like this one. This is a good sideboard weapon against some decks, or at least it was. I don't know if anybody's really playing the Reaping. So that it is a the Runeblade 2-handed weapon. Attacks for 3. It has a once per turn action. Pay 1 resource to attack. The hero has more life than any other hero they can.
So that's actually, I mean, I'm trying to think of like against like Guardian, against Prism, stuff like that. I mean, it could be decent. If a hero has more life than any other hero, they can't gain life. What I like about this is that it doesn't say the opponent's hero. It says any other hero, which sort of leads to believe that there might be this free for all style of game that is available. Like, I don't know if that exists right now, some sort of like 1v1v1 or like a Commander-esque style
they do have,
game. Does that
Ultimate Pit Fight is a format that they have. It's a multiplayer. It's not that popular. I know people have been kind of designing different kinds of multiplayer formats. I've seen it sound pretty cool. I'm sure as the card pool gets larger, we're that. But
okay. Well, I will say this: a 1 for 3 attack swing is not terrible. I mean, that's not given the fact that how many other hammers out there are pitch 3 for 4. So a 1 for 3 is not bad. If ever, I will say this: if ever there was a hero that really went hard in the paint on life gain, this could be a sideboard Runeblade card for Runeblades out there. I think that if the new set comes out and there's a hero that really dug into the life gain element of a deck for whatever you want to call it, for a fatigue element or fatigue style game, or just survival. I mean, the Reaping Blade is a great sideboard tech against that kind of nonsense.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a cleric hero, floating around in
Ooh,
design somewhere.
like a monk. Yeah.
Yeah. And our last rare is Rushing River. This is a ninja attack action. 0 cost. We got there. 3 attack, 3 defense. As combo, if Torrent of Tempo was the last attack this combat chain, Rushing River gains +1. Go again, and if it hits, draw X cards. Then put X cards from your hand on top of your deck order, where X is the number of attacks that have hit this combat chain. The mouthy one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this card is. I guess it kind of fixes your hand. Torrent of Tempo is a great card. So, I guess the draw X and replace X is a decent way if you're planning on, I suppose, continuing your attack pattern. What comes after this card, I have no idea. In terms of, I think it's Flood of Force is the one that comes after this, where, but the Flood of Force is, it's not exactly like a great follow-up card, as it were. So it's not like your Rising Knee Thrust into Blackout Kick. Like, that's a clean line that does a lot of damage. No, the Rushing River line, Torrent of Tempo is the all-star in that combo line. It's a 5 for 1 that on hit goes again. So it's not just it's more than a defense reaction to block, right? So it's more than a sink below. It's more than a whatever. So it's a pretty sweet option. But yeah, Rushing River, it's got the 3 costs, but it's kind of a little, it's the forgotten child of the Katsu combo lines.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the Kraken pack. Nothing too spicy, but the rares will go into the giveaway anyway that I'll be posting on Twitter soon. But let's get moving on. I want to know the story behind and leading up to Orlando. Who reached out to you? Obviously, that's awesome that you got behind the booth. How was it? Etc.
So, over the course of several years, I've done casting for a multitude of different games, either as like a hired gun or just for various different events, charity events, or just helping friends out, just to lend my voice to whatever they're organizing and putting on. I've done obviously I've been hired and I'm on contract with CDPR for Gwent. I'm been hired and have contracts with games like Cards, KARDS. I used to be the caster for Mythgard, which no longer is a thing. But on the smaller scale of just like community style events, I've done stuff for Magic, whatever. And over the course of several years, I've worked with so many different people, and your network kind of grows in that regard. And at one point, I was put in touch with Channel Fireball by Alias V. Alias V is one of my closest friends. She used to live in Toronto, and she used to stream Gwent as well. And we hung out, and we just became really good friends. Myself, her husband, we just all became, really, really good friends. So I still visit her usually once a month, and we hang out. And anyway, it was her birthday. I bought her a box of Welcome to Wrath just to say, hey, here's a game I want you to try out just to see. And we played, and she liked it. She beat me, which was awesome. And eventually we're talking about this and that and whatever. And then there was I just had mentioned casually that I was looking to see if I can get into the casting world. And she put me in touch with Channel Fireball. And Channel Fireball asked for not like references, but they asked for a demo reel, like give us your work, show us what you've done. And I sent them some clips, some past full broadcasts, that whole thing. I gave them a whole plethora of all my nonsense in my big giant mouth, and they said, all right, we're gonna take it. To them must have felt like a gigantic dice roll, because they just had done multiple callings with top tier talent, people like Tan and Grace, and Matt Rogers had done some of it as well, but he's more of a pro. People whom I absolutely adore, like Red Zone Rogue and DM Armada. These are people who I had met in Orlando, and like DM Armada and I, it took it took us like 5 minutes to just become really good friends and really gel. And that was one of those situations where it was just it just I don't say it was meant to be, but the chemistry was always it was always there. It was just for us to just brush the dust off of it and figure it out. But that's more or less how it came to be. And the risk was all on Channel Fireball, who already had a roster of excellent players, but they had one spot to fill because at US Nats some of the broadcast talent were actually competing in it.
Mm-hmm.
So they rolled the dice on this Canadian clown like myself who couldn't compete in the US Nationals for obvious reasons, and I went in there, and it was basically all she wrote from that point onward. It was my first ever real big attempt at Flesh and Blood casting. I'd practiced a lot. I'd done that whole thing, but it just felt good. It felt natural. It felt it took all of 2 turns for me to say, okay, I think I got this. And I may not know all the cards. I may not be an expert at every hero, but I know the game, I know the rules, and I know how to broadcast and create a narrative of a card game. So I'm going to rely on my co-caster to carry the big brain aspect, and I'll carry the big mouth aspect. And that's kind of the dynamic that we went with. And I think it went well. I honestly do. And I hope that I can go ahead and continue doing events for Flesh and Blood for Channel Fireball and whatnot, because it was so fun. It was probably some of the most fun I've had broadcasting a card game.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And you did do a great job. And do you think, so obviously you would love to continue to do it. Do you think Flesh and Blood LSS has coverage in mind for their future? Obviously that was huge that they went in on coverage for these first couple North American callings. It was honestly surprising to a lot of people.
I don't know how much I can say or what I'm privy. I didn't sign any NDAs or anything like that. Like, there's nothing that everything I heard was basically because I was within a circle during a conversation discussing things. I am not within any sort of inner cabal of information. That's not kind of my jam or jive. But I do know that there are going to be plenty of events next year. Plenty of events.
Okay, well,
plenty of events.
Hope they get announced soon. I'm pumped.
Oh, I would suspect. I mean, I'm sure the way that these kind of things kind of work is they at least when it comes to the other card games I've worked, usually these events get announced with the lead up sort of hype train towards a new set.
Mm-hmm.
So I would imagine come the end of December to early January, you're going to start hearing things about when the RTN season is going to be and when to start pumping up your experience points and doing all that kind of stuff, right? So I don't know any information besides the fact that there are going to be a ton of events next year. And I sincerely hope, and again, it depends on what Tannen Gray said about me, because he said nice things about me, but you never know with Tannen. Tannen has a silver tongue, so he may have just I love Tannen. Tannen and I are have like quickly become really good friends. We shared a hotel room for that entire weekend in Orlando. We had some great chats, had some good dinners, and like worked together, and it was just a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, the way it comes down to it is basically it's a matter of if the people like me and I understand it's ultimately it's a business, and if I am a detriment to the business, then there's no reason to keep me on board. So I try my best to represent my employer and the event in the best way possible. And yeah, I don't want to say I go off the rails, but I have my personality that I like to inject into the broadcasts. I mean, that's who I am, and that's the reason I'm hired. I'm not playing a role. I am myself accomplishing a task, and that is to bring the spotlight on the game and create a narrative and create an excitement for what's going on, because really anybody can name the card that is being played and calculate damage. But what I try to do is to really shine a light on the consequence, to shine a light on the entire story arc of how that turn operated, and the consequence of the previous turn to that turn, and the consequence of that moving forward, and how that changes the complexion of the actual game. And all this to say is I really hope that I get to go back, because it was probably some of the funnest casting I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, well, I don't think you're a detriment at all, and I hope to see you back in the booth and hopefully meet you in person at an event in the future, especially if there's going to be a ton. But let's get to Canadian Nats. You partook as a player. How first of all, how is the Canadian community? I have a loyal listener, Farcist, who's in the Discord. He's always chatting. He's a Canadian chap himself. What's the community like?
Well, first of all, he's also been somebody who I've spoken to privately, sends me messages every now and then. He's a great dude. So cheers to you. I appreciate you listening. And the Canadian scene is I it's a blessing to players who just want to get into a game and feel intimidated, because I know I've been there for other games where you walk in or you go to an event and you have no clue what's going on, and there will be people who are either annoyed by the fact that they have to explain things, they're annoyed by the fact that you're reading cards and you're taking your time and whatnot, you might make a mistake. But from what I've understood is that in the most even in circumstances where there might be something on the line, the vast majority of the players are more interested in creating a good experience than they are in winning. And that, I believe, is incredibly important
Mhm.
to the longevity of a game, to the success, how a game can thrive within the pockets of the communities that are being developed. I know that whenever I'm playing, I don't unless there's a significant piece of or prize on the board. I'm very much somebody who is like, listen, I want you to learn, so I don't care if I win or lose. If a promo card is not going to change my life, but if I give you a good experience that allows you to come back and improve as a player, that is a better outcome for me and for this game than it is for me to win. To have a chance at a cold foil shiver. Yeah, cold foil shiver is cool. Like, let's just be fair, or a rainbow foil Oldham. But at the end of the day, I don't want to crap on your time here because you accidentally made a misplay, or you forgot a tunic trigger in a garbage armory that happens once a week. I don't say garbage armor, but you know what I mean, like a
Yeah,
small little event.
yeah.
So the majority of the Canadian players that I have played with, I was in that position where I would make a play and they would explain to me why that play was suboptimal, or why that play is, I don't say illegal, but why I should have done it another way. And
Mhm.
oftentimes they'll even allow me to walk it back and say, no, you want to do this, then this, because of XYZ. And it's like, wow, I appreciate that. So that same courtesy that has been afforded to me in casual gameplay, I try to do the best to mimic and to mirror it back to others, to pay it forward, because that positive game experience creates better players, and those better players are more inclined to bring their friends in and to compete and to keep playing and grow the game. And the Canadian scene has just been ripe with those types of people who are willing to take the time to acclimate you to the game, to teach you the rules, to answer questions, to take their time to make sure that your experience is positive. And I will always cherish that, because I'd never always had that. When I
Mhm.
was with Magic, I had bumped into players who were real jerks, to players who just were not, who were not happy to wait for you to pass the cards in a draft because you had never drafted that set. You knew nothing about it and you were just reading cards. People who were just kind of, upset that you were taking more than 10 seconds to run your turn because you were trying to work out complex lines in your mind. But I will say this, in Flesh and Blood, where the turns are immensely complex, both oftentimes on attack, but especially on defense,
Mhm.
the patience that the players I have played against have shown me, and continue to show everyone else, is so nice to see, and it is such a positive experience here in Canada. And I'm very lucky to not only play with some of the nicest players, but also some of the most skilled players in the country.
Yeah, and honestly, it's great hearing that because I've found that this is also true in the States here and in all my experiences playing the game. Well, so it seems to be a flesh and blood thing overall, at least from our two experiences. Not necessarily true. It doesn't have to be true for everyone, but it seems to be that way. So, Canadian Nats, what was the venue like? And obviously it was a shame that there was no coverage. Was that like kind of a last minute thing? think?
I don't think it was a last minute thing because I believe all the way up until about probably 3 to 4 weeks prior to the event, as soon as it got essentially announced, maybe about a month prior, as soon as I found out that I was going to be in it, I reached out to inquire about broadcasting. I said, look, I'm in the tournament. I don't want to play in the tournament if I can broadcast the tournament because to me, getting paid to cast an event is like, the EV on that is so much better than grinding through 8 or 9 rounds of Swiss. I'll tell you that. So,
Definitely.
oh god, that's the guarantee. And so, I basically reached out, and multiple times I was just told no. Told it was a little bit of a jungle to hack through because the questions that I would ask seemed very straightforward, but the answers I got were murky and weird. So ultimately, the answers kept coming through, and it's like, no, it's not being broadcast, and you cannot broadcast it on your own if you wanted to or whatnot, which was a little bit unfortunate because you come off of all these callings, you come off of US Nats, and everybody's tuned in all across the world. People are watching these major events, all the Flesh and Blood fans, and here's the next big one. I say the next big one, but it's a big event where some of the best players in the world are playing, and you're thinking, why are you not taking the opportunity to pump this out into the world? There's clearly a demand, and there's clearly the opportunity with the skill level that is being played here. But I mean, the venue itself was I'm going to take this in the most positive way possible.
Okay.
I used to work for a major airline as a social media manager for many years, and before I went into this, and we used to have quarterly conferences at that venue, and it was the worst. So
okay.
we used to dislike it. It was never comfortable. No knock on the venue for what it is. I mean, but the venue is a place where you go on you have a dude on a stage with a big PowerPoint behind him and a bunch of like chairs. It wasn't meant to be a place where you're cramming in 80 to 100 people, elbow to elbow, to play a card game. It was logistically, it was a nightmare. The venue was small, it was cramped, but they did their best. And I don't know if it was just an oversight wherein they didn't think that it was going to be this big of a deal. But you go from Orlando Convention Center, which is like a small city,
oh my God,
where there's you saw that play. If you go in through the wrong door, it's like it's like a $3 Uber ride to go from one end to the other. Like, it was ridiculous. But anyway, ultimately, all this to say, the venue was, they may have just underestimated how this event was going to be taken by the community, and they kind of just, it was like, if they could have had it in a cafeteria, they would have. But what they did do was the judging was great. They were attentive. They were on the ball with a lot of things. And what was cool also was that at the same time, we had this one little room tucked away in a corner, but during the same time in the main part of the convention center, like the actual convention area, they had a sports card and memorabilia, kind of like festival or whatever. And
wow.
yeah, and it's like Bret Hart was there, the Hitman was there, and you had like all these hockey players and all these athletes and all this stuff. And I was like, hey, that's awesome. I'm like, I'm here for Flesh and Blood, but I can, if I want to, I could be put in a sharpshooter for like $70. I'm like, that's part of the option. So
nice.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot left to be desired, but the experience was positive, and I think that it's a learning, it's a lesson to be learned for anybody who wants to undertake one of these major events moving forward. Because Channel Fireball did it like the pros and bosses that they were. There was plenty of space to move, breathe, and just be a human being. Whereas at the other venue. I have a feeling that moving forward, they're not going to make that mistake again. That they're going to invest in a place that'll be slightly bigger than a high school gym. Actually, it was not even anywhere close to that. Like,
oh my God, I can't even imagine.
I'm trying to think about like what to. It was like the size of like a McDonald's, like,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
like
Okay.
it was
All right.
very small. It was very. I mean, don't get me like there were people that were when they were not playing were in the hallway outside of it, just sitting on the floor because there was no place to. There wasn't much place to go. I mean, there were a couple pictures floating around, but again, the people at Dolly's were very kind. They were very awesome. The judging staff was excellent. I just think that there was a missed mark when it came down to venue and broadcasting, because it was an opportunity to just say, all right, we got some of the best players in the world playing the hottest game out there. Let's do this right, and it left a lot to be desired.
Yeah, yeah. So bringing it all together, less than ideal, right? So,
Mm,
you're
yes, I mean, I want to be positive about it at the same
yeah.
time, and um, I think that this is just like I said. I think it was just maybe perhaps an oversight in terms of
Hmm.
what the popularity and the demand would have been for this.
Yeah.
But c'est la vie.
So you played Briar. It was a heavy Briar weekend across the world. Just some quick numbers to throw out there. Canada, 54% Briar field. Poland, 63% in the top 24. Greece was an outlier. They didn't really have. It wasn't as big an event. 15% only, but only took down. And then, Briar did win Netherlands, Denmark, Belgium, and Sweden. How was Briar playing in this Canadian Nats? I know that it didn't win, and Yuki won with Lexi. And I want to know a little bit about that Kano match that you had posted about on Twitter.
Oh man. So, all right, we'll start with the Briar. I don't think that there was any surprise because Briar has two things going for it. Number one, it obviously has an insane power level and a form that in which it's hard to punish unless you're specifically punishing the element of cost of cards. But frankly, the card, like the deck itself, is just very well suited to go full throttle. And I mean, when I play Briar, my decision tree on the defense was always this. It was on hit effect, no. Okay, lethal, no. Block, no. That was basically the three questions you asked, and in most cases, that was it. And my first opponent was David Rude, whom I had no idea who this person was because I have always been very ignorant about the competitive scene of card games in general. But I later found out that this is somebody who has won multiple, Magic Opens, was like a top tier card player. I had no idea who this person was. And it was a close game and they beat me and I felt okay about it. I was like, all right, off to an okay start, but they piloted the Briar, and Briar also has the luxury of being a card that, or a deck that, if you've started this game, even a couple months prior to Tales of Aria, you
Yep.
probably have Command and Conquers, you probably have Tunic, all the major pieces that you've likely already invested in go in this deck, and everything else is exceptionally cheap.
Yeah.
Everything else in this so it's a fairly cheap deck to build if you've already played a competitive deck prior to this. So I don't fault people for playing it, because why would you want to invest in a brand new deck that costs a lot of money? Like, are you going to go out there and buy a Ram's Head and a Heart of Ice and some Terra Sunders and this and that to play Oldhim? Or are you just going to take the Skull Cap and the Tunic that you already have? Maybe you pick up a Grasp of the Arknight if you haven't already played Chain, and then you slam in, a few Ravenous Rabbles and some Ball Lightnings, and you go to town. So that was, how that went. I will say that, despite the fact that there are so many Briars out there are not that many good Briar players. And
Okay.
I'm not saying this to detriment the fact that there are good Fab players, but a lot of players out there that I would watch and see would be very inclined to just toss out defense when they didn't need to. And I'm not saying that, you should never block, but why are you tossing out cards to soak up damage when that damage is coming back for so much more, because a non-attack action means so much more to Briar than just the card text. So these are the players that advance with Briar are really some of the top tier. But yeah, I mean, the field was great, and like you mentioned, I played that Kano match against David Rude, who's a world class player. Then I played against a Dash that just couldn't get it going, and a Bolton that just couldn't get anything going, and against Briar that's constantly breathing down your neck.
Yeah.
It was just game over. And then there was that infamous Kano match that really just absolutely split my mind wide open.
Oh my God. I mean, you posted a picture on Twitter and I was like, what am I even looking at? Is he just showing you his deck? I mean, what's going on here?
It looked like a deck tech, right? With everything on the board. It looked like, okay, here's my deck. But in reality, okay, so if you're out there listening to this and you have not seen this picture, just go to my Twitter account. Look towards, God knows how many tweets ago, but there was a picture I posted that basically was the board state of my opponent's first Kano turn. And I won't spoil too much of it, but basically there were approximately probably 8 or 9 cards in the pitch zone. So that was their first turn. 8 or 9 cards in the pitch zone. I won't even talk about what was on the combat chain. But that deck was played by a player named Wesley Tang, whom I've played in the past, and I've beaten in the past. But when they brought that deck up, and they told me, they're like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever done with this deck. And I said, I tend to agree. And the worst part about that entire game, and I'm not trying to downplay my opponent, but he said, he's like, I am just unfavored against Briar, especially since I'm going second. I said, that's fair. I felt okay. I had my Shock Charmers out to block some Arcane if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But it came down to it where I think they gained 4 health in a turn, or 3 or 4 health. And then it came down to where I was basically representing lethal. I had an E-Strike. The E-Strike had go again. I needed to draw a card. That card that I drew needed to be one of the following things: a non-attack action, a lightning card, or an attack with go again. So I had so many outs, and I drew an Arcanic
almost. Right?
Basically, and the card I drew was an Arcanic Crackle.
Ugh.
So it was an attack that did not have go again, and that was basically what did me in, because that was going to represent lethal. If I had anything of those, a lightning press, a lightning surge, anything with lightning in the title, a ball lightning, a nimbleism, a this, a that, anything would have produced presented lethal, but it wasn't. It didn't happen, and then they popped off and they killed me. But again, it was basically after that Orlando Kano match where people were like, "Holy crap!" That deck just pulled it essentially right out of their ass and won.
Yep.
Then I go into this and I see that and I post that picture. I'm really hoping that people are on this and are willing to invest the brainwaves to figure out Kano, because Kano is the truth. Kano is, if that deck gets one more card, it is gonna be absolutely busted wide open. If that deck gets one more good card, I think that is going to be the truth. And the problem is that people just don't know how to play it or are not interested in investing in it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I might as well just throw this out there. I hadn't talked about it yet, but Everfest was announced, and it's gonna release on February 4th. January 24th is the preview season, and this is the set that they said would have support for every single hero, which that includes Kano. So it sounds like he might be getting that one more card. So we're gonna see if Kano really is the truth. So Yuki wins Canadian Nats with Ice Lexi. Obviously a great choice if you're going to face down 54% of the field. Ice Lexi is the way to go. Obviously, it was a shame that Isaac and Orlando had that whiff on the 3 of a kind. I think people will be talking about that whiff for a long time. Did you get to watch any of Yuki's matches with Lexi?
I did not get to see any of Yuki's matches with the Lexi. I'm just glad that Lexi won. I've never met Yuki, and I think I want to, absolutely. I got to get this dude on the podcast and talk to him about it. Same thing with Isaac. And what's fascinating about Isaac and the apparent bad luck that Isaac had with that 3 of a kind. I was talking to Tarek Patel about that matchup, and he was mentioning about in that matchup, practicing it as Lexi or against Lexi, 3 of a kind whiffs were not that uncommon. Yeah, they're unlikely, but uncommon is a different story. And he had mentioned, he's like, you know what? It happened in the 15-20 games that we practiced against Ice Lexi. 3 of a kind whiffed many times. And it wasn't like this cosmic, turbulence that just completely changed the landscape and the timeline. No, it was the fact that, frankly, it was bad luck. It's like kind of, you lost a 1 in 10, and that's as bad as 10% happens. I mean, we've all played card games and we've all played games with RNG and dice rolls, and we know that, sometimes you roll that D20 and the 1 shows up and everything goes to hell. It's just the way it goes. But frankly, it wasn't that big of a this, like I said, like this cosmic disturbance that this smite straight from God. But I'm happy to see Lexi win, because we've seen Oldham win and we've seen Briar win, and Lexi was just there. And when I was discussing with some of my playtest partners prior, when Briar wasn't even necessarily on the major radar, like prior to UK Nats, when I was practicing, because I was lucky enough to have access to that deck prior to UK Nats. I was part of sort of the playtest group with Tarek and those people, so I was practicing with that deck. And when that deck got out on that weekend of UK Nats, like Halloween weekend, I had gotten the green light to say, all right, we're playing it at that Nats, so it's no longer going to be a secret. You can play it at whatever armories or tournaments that you want to. And the tournament I brought it to was $1,000 tournament, and I went 8-0 and won that tournament.
Oh my god!
So, and people were like, "What the hell is this?" So after that, the people that I was talking to with some of my local playtest partners, a buddy of mine named Martin Ho, who is very much into Ice Lexi, was telling me that Ice Lexi's probably pretty good against it. And then we'd play, and he'd win 3 out of 4 games, 3 out of 4 games, 3 out of 4 games, and it was insane. And I was like, Ice Lexi is gonna be good if people figure out this Briar list. So he dug real deep into that Ice Lexi list, and that was basically all of my practice. I forgot about practicing the mirror against Briar, and all I did was practice against Ice Oldham and Ice Lexi, and it was a slog and it was tough, but that was the truth out there. Again, basically, you're either the meta or the predator, and Ice Lexi was the predator in that field. The problem is that Ice Lexi really only feasts on 1 or 2 types of decks, like those go wide style decks, like Katsu or Briar. But like you saw the numbers, the numbers were so skewed towards Briar that Ice Lexi is gonna have a pretty good time finding those Briars. So the Briars that are gonna win are gonna advance up the Swiss rankings, and all the Lexis are just gonna prey on them. So it was the climate was there for Lexi to succeed, and I'm glad that she did, because that hero needed love, and people kind of had fallen off of Lexi right out of the when Arya was released. I'm like, 2 arsenals, that's amazing. People were all about Lexi, and then suddenly she wasn't succeeding, and then now this is what everyone's talking about.
Yeah, it is exciting, and it's cool to see all 3 heroes from Tales of Arya get some wins. Oldham, obviously, I'm partial to myself. Unfortunately, he is a hero that does well against Briar and like Chain and stuff like that, but not that great against the rest of the field. Mostly because he just goes to time every single match. But
yeah.
I got to say, man, it's been great having you. I want to go in for the close here. I know you got to shoot down to the United States for a getaway here, and I want you to plug your socials, plug anything you want. And then I want you to talk a little bit about your favorite food that comes from Canada. I like to talk about food.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me just preface this with the fact that I appreciate the fact that you create content for this game, and I'm very much an advocate for the adage that a rising tide raises all ships. Like, there's no reason for people to be competitive against each other. I know that you have your podcast, I have mine, but ultimately we're all doing the same thing, which is promoting a game that we love. So I appreciate you being on this show. I know that you will be on our show or my show in the near future. So I'm looking forward to that. And so you can catch me. I stream Gwent every day, more or less. Well, not for the next 2 weeks because I'll be away, but on twitch.tv/watchflake, WATCHFLAKE, on Twitter @watchflake, and I have my Flesh and Blood podcast, which is called the Instant Speed Podcast. You can catch that on it's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts, or wherever. I don't know. I let my producer do all that nonsense because I don't know what the hell any of this does, but so it's out there, and I do appreciate, again, if you like this podcast, you might like mine as well. And don't lie, you've got time to listen to both. So
Yeah, you do.
Don't lie to us. Come on.
And I definitely agree with that. It takes a village. It's what's good for the goose, good for the gander. I'm glad to see a bunch of different podcasts, and I think we're all a little bit different in our own ways. And I think that's great, and I hope people like to enjoy all of them. So what's some food? Tell me some food in Canada that, I should be keeping on my radar for the next time I'm up there.
All right. So here, I'm going to give you a little bit of my hometown, which is Montreal in Quebec. And obviously, if you're in Quebec, the first thing that comes to mind is poutine. And poutine, if you don't know what it is, it's fries, gravy, cheese curds. It's a staple. Don't go for any of the fancy crap. Don't go to those gourmet places with the whatever that adds all kinds of nonsense. Go for the hardcore, greasy, 3 a.m. after the bar closes poutine that you get at those places that there's a place called like La Belle Province or La Fleur's. La Fleur's or La Belle Province are the places that you want to go for greasy poutine at 3 a.m. when the bar closes. That's what you want to get. Otherwise, I will say this, if you're in Montreal, Schwartz's smoked meat. Montreal does smoked meat better than anywhere else in the world. Schwartz's is world-class smoked meat. Believe it's on Saint Laurent in Montreal, Saint Laurent Street. But either way, I haven't been there in ages. I forgot where it is, but that is what you want to do. The best thing that you could possibly do is go to Schwartz's before the bar. You get loaded, and then at 3 a.m. when last call wraps up, you stumble home and you pass by a La Belle Province, and you get I believe it's a #1 combo, which is 2 steamy hot dogs and a 2 steamies, poutine, and a drink. It's going to be like $10. And then you stumble back home. That is the play. That is a veteran move if you're a Montrealer.
I am hungry, Flake. Thank you again. This is going to do it for the podcast. You can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/freshbudspod. You can email the podcast at freshbudspod@gmail.com. We have a Discord, and it's just starting to grow now. One of the listeners, Seth, kind of really put together some really great stuff in the Discord. We chat, we play games. I'm excited to get my PC back up and running so I can do more webcam games, stuff like that. Be sure to check out the Instant Speed podcast and all of Flake's content. The great guy has been really gracious to help me do this podcast and bear with me while I had technical difficulties. And yeah, thanks again, Flake.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys, everyone, for listening. I appreciate it.